Today we're talking about applying online for jobs in the UK and more specifically using your CV. If you're planning to apply for jobs in the UK or if you have been applying with your CVs and not hearing back, this video is for you. We'll talk about the army of robots that actually process your CV before it goes to an actual human being. There are many tips to help your CV get noticed online in the UK. Towards the end of this video, we'll review some of those tips. But before that, we'll explain how this all works. As always, if you enjoy this content, leave me a like. If you find it interesting, tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos on how to get a job in the UK and much more. Alright, let's go. The UK job market has been subdued by robots. If you're applying for jobs in the UK with your CV online, you should know that most times your CV is actually not gonna go first to a human being. And that's understandable. Put yourself in the shoes of the person recruiting for the job you're applying for. They might be getting hundreds and hundreds of CVs every day for that one job. And those people might be recruiting for many jobs at the same time. So how do they do to sort out between all those CVs? Well, they use something called an ATS, or Applicant Tracking System. The ATS is the robot or software that will first look at your CV before anybody else. They will classify your CV and cut it into categories so that a human being can decide if it's worth looking at or not. And they might be more prevalent than you think. When we look at some statistics, 40% of UK employers are assumed to be using some kind of ATS. If we look at bigger companies like the Fortune 500, we're looking at 98% of those companies using an ATS. Overall, that means that your CV and a lot of others, around 75% of them, won't be passing the first stage, which is the ATS, the robots. So yes, those robots, those ATS are pretty much everywhere. When you apply on CV Library or Indeed or Reed, probably you are going to end up in an ATS. And this is also the reason why when you apply to a big company in the UK, most of the time they ask you to put again the same information in the application than you can find in your CV. So even though you uploaded your CV for that application, they will ask you about your education, your experience and all sorts of information that they must already know from your CV. And the main reason for this is that you writing down the same information in the dedicated categories makes it easier for the ATS, for the robots, to read it and classify you against other applicants. Alright, so I hope I made it clear that it's very important to please those robots, to make sure that they let you through, that you get everything right that they wanted you to have. The question is, how do we do that? Before I give you some practical tips to get past those robots, to please the robots so that you get your CV in front of the actual person who is recruiting for the job, I want to tell you a little bit more about how this all works. Alright, so let me give you a practical example. Let's say that I am the recruiter and I am looking for an engineer. I am probably looking for a certain kind of engineer, someone who has certain experience, went to certain school, did certain type of project, and I am going to write all of this down in my job description. On the other side, because I am expecting a lot of applicants, I will go to my ATS and write down everything I want those people to look like in terms of their CVs. So maybe I want someone who managed a team within the last 2 years, I will put that. Maybe I want someone who's got a master degree in a certain kind of engineering science, I will put that as well. I want someone who is around the city I'm hiring for, so I don't want them to be too far, I would put that as well. And maybe I also want them to have a local phone number so that I know they are actually around. I will put that as well. Essentially, what I'm going to do is build the perfect profile of the person for that job in terms of everything I can put in the TMS. And there's a lot of categories in there. So as I said, I will look at the job titles, what they did in those jobs, how they explained it in the job description, where did they go to school, how fast did they progress within their career. All of that I can put within there and then have people filtered based on it. Once I formatted my TMS, I will take the job description and go on website to actually advertise for this job. I will go on LinkedIn, on CV Library, on Indeed or Reed, and I will say I am looking for an engineer. This is the job, this is what I want to do. If you want to apply, please, the link is below. People will apply and I'll leave it a couple of days, maybe 1 week, and after a while I will have maybe 200 or 300 people applying for it. Well, I'm not gonna look myself for all of those people, right? This is way too long for someone to do it. So I will have the TMS that I program to do it for me. And the TMS is gonna recategorize all of those CVs, put them together into a database and tell me, this is CV number 1, this is CV number 300, those are all the CVs, they ranked, this is the best match for your job, and I will have a list that will be created by that software. What does it mean? It means that if in theory you are very good for this particular job position, if your CV is actually not optimized for the TMS and for that particular position, you are unlikely to be in the top people that will be ranked by the software. And we know that this happens all the time. Some very qualified people actually get filtered out because their CVs don't match the description or are not optimized for those TMS. So what can you do? How can you optimize your CV to make sure that it actually goes in front of human eyeballs? We'll look at some tips right now. The first thing to do is to actually do a search on keywords. You have to understand that the more you match the keywords that this job is looking for, the more chances you are to be highly ranked in the TMS. And keywords can be optimized in all categories of your CV. For example, with your job titles, if those match exactly the job you're applying for, you have more chances. Likewise, if your job description actually matches what they're looking for example, you managed the team before and the job is looking for someone who managed people in the past, you also have more chances. Overall, the trick in terms of keywords is that your CV matches as much as possible the actual job description. You might know by now that you really need to rewrite your CV for every job you apply for. Don't worry about wasting time because applying with a basic CV is probably not going to get you anywhere. Keep in mind that if you just apply with your CV online, you have only a 1% chance of getting an answer. And this is the statistics for everyone without optimized CVs. Obviously, if you spend time optimizing your CV, you probably get more chances. Okay, number 3, and something that's very important to be optimized for the UK market, is the actual qualifications you have. For example, if you went to university and you studied something, you have to make sure that this is translated according to UK qualifications. You don't want to have something that the TMS doesn't recognize, otherwise they won't see that you are actually qualified for the job and you won't even get in past the door. Also, you want to make sure for your degrees that you write the actual long form and the acronym of the name of the title of your degree. What that means is that, for example, if you did an MBA, you want to be saying that you did a Masters of Business Administration and put MBA. Both of those are very important. The fourth point that might mess up the ATS is the actual categories that you find within your CV. For example, if you're talking about your professional experience or your education, you want to use those words. You don't want to say something like where I have been or where I've studied, because the actual ATS might not understand what those categories are and it might mess up the whole process. The fifth point is the font. You don't want to be too fancy with the font of your CV. That means you don't want to have too many different colors, you don't want to have different fonts, you don't want to have fonts that are not very conventional and can't be read by the ATS. If you use those tips and optimize your CV for the algorithms and softwares that will read your CV before anybody does, you should get more traction online when you apply for jobs. However, that doesn't mean that you should over-optimize your CV. As with Google, you don't want to just drop keywords everywhere. The reason here is that at the end of the day, keep in mind that someone will look at your CV and that person will be a human being that has to make a decision. you still want a balance between passing those robots and pleasing those robots, but also having something that you want the recruiter to actually look at as a human being. Okay, that's all for today. If you're applying for jobs, I know it's very tough right now. Don't be discouraged. There's always something you can do. If you are optimizing your CV, that will give you an edge and hopefully you will start to get more traction. However, I also believe that LinkedIn and a new way of applying for jobs is more efficient in the UK. As I said, only 1% of the jobs you apply for will get a response by traditional means, by using CVs. However, getting LinkedIn and having a very creative way of interacting with people there might get you much further. If you want to know more about how to get a job on LinkedIn, make sure to subscribe. I will make more videos on this topic. I personally myself got all my jobs on LinkedIn and I will be discussing some of the best practices. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like the video. If you have something interesting to say, let me know in the comments. If you want some help with your CV, you can just contact us. We have a service. If you use the code E45, random cream that was just there, you get 10% off. Don't forget to subscribe. There will be way more videos. If you're learning English, I think this is good for you because I'm speaking as a French person. There will also be more videos in French. We are trying to do every other video in another language to help you get there, get a job in the UK, or be able to speak as I do. Have a great time learning and see you in the next one.